"You canceled my vacation?" I gasped. "You weren't invited," she sneered. "So I ruined theirs." I still remember that evening like it happened yesterday, even though it's been a few months now. It was early spring in Chicago, the kind of weather where the wind off Lake Michigan cuts right through you, and everyone's dreaming about warmer places. I was in our family home in the suburbs, a modest 2-story house in Oak Park with its creaky wooden floors and the kitchen that always smelled faintly of Diane's herbal teas. Diane is my stepmom. She married my dad, Michael, about 5 years ago after my mom passed away. She's not a bad person deep down, I think. She just has this way of making everything about her and Chloe, her daughter from her first marriage. Chloe's a year younger than me, 21 now, and she's always been the one who gets the spotlight, probably because Diane worries about her fitting in after their own family split up. Anyway, I had come over after my shift at the coffee shop in Wrigleyville, where I work part-time while finishing up my community college classes in graphic design. The shop is one of those cozy spots near Wrigley Field, with exposed brick walls and customers who tip well during Cubs season. I was tired but excited because we'd been planning this family vacation to Miami Beach for weeks. It was supposed to be a 2-week getaway in late April, right when the Florida sun is perfect without being too scorching. I'd been looking forward to it so much, imagining walking along South Beach, maybe trying some Cuban food in Little Havana, or just lounging by the ocean to escape the Midwest chill. I had even helped pay for part of it. Money's tight for me. My job pays about $18 an hour, and after rent on my small 1-bedroom apartment in Wrigleyville, with its tiny kitchenette and view of the L tracks, I don't have much left over. But Dad had mentioned how expensive the trip was getting, especially with spring break crowds pushing prices up. Flights from O'Hare to Miami International were averaging around $250 per person round trip, according to what I saw online when booking. The hotel at the Hilton in Miami Beach was about $300 a night for each room. We needed 2, one for Dad and Diane, one for me and Chloe, which added up to over $8,000 for 14 nights. Then there was the Hertz car rental at the airport, about $500 for 2 weeks for a mid-size SUV to get around. And the excursions, an Everglades airboat tour at $45 per person and a Biscayne Bay boat tour at $27 each. Total for 4 people was pushing $7,000, not counting food or extras. Dad had complained about the costs over dinner one night, saying it was straining his budget from his job as a logistics manager at a warehouse near the airport, so I offered to chip in. I worked extra shifts, skipped my usual weekend trips to the Art Institute downtown, and put $1,000 toward it. $250 for my flight share, $500 toward the hotel to cover part of our room, $150 for the car, and $100 for the tours. It felt good at the time, like I was really part of the family, contributing as an adult. But that evening, as I walked into the living room with its overstuffed couches and the family photos on the mantel, mostly of Chloe's dance recitals and Diane's garden club events, everything changed. Diane was sitting there, flipping through a travel magazine, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She's in her late 40s, with that polished look from her job as a real estate agent, always dressed in neat blouses, even at home. Dad was in his recliner, scrolling on his phone, probably checking sports scores. I asked about the final packing list, and that's when Diane looked up and said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather. "Oh, Sarah, about the vacation. We decided it's better if it's just the 3 of us." I gasped, feeling my chest tighten. "You canceled my vacation?" She sneered a little, that half smile she does when she's trying to seem reasonable but really isn't. "You weren't invited in the first place. Chloe wanted this to be a special time for us to bond, after all the changes we've been through. It hit me like a punch. Not invited? I'd been talking about it for months, picturing us all together, but there it was. Diane's way of protecting her little unit, I guess. She probably thought including me would complicate things, remind everyone of Dad's first family. Chloe, who's studying marketing at a local university and always posting perfect selfies from her yoga classes, had likely pushed for it too, wanting the attention without sharing. Dad just muttered something about not wanting drama, avoiding my eyes. He's a good guy, works hard, but he hates conflict and lets Diane handle the family stuff. I felt a mix of anger and hurt, like I wanted to yell but also cry. Part of me wondered if I deserved it. Maybe I hadn't tried hard enough to fit in. But then the resentment built up. This wasn't the first time. Family holidays always centered on Chloe's schedule, and if I spoke up, I was the difficult one. Standing there in that familiar living room with the clock ticking on the wall, something shifted. I forced myself to stay calm and said, "Fine, enjoy your trip." But inside, I was already thinking about how much control I had over those bookings, since so many were tied to my credit card. What they didn't realize was that because I'd paid for parts of it, my name was on the reservations. The hotel, the car, the excursions. If I wasn't going, why should they? It wasn't just spite. It felt like reclaiming what was mine after years of feeling like an outsider in my own family. I went back to my apartment that night, the one bedroom in Wrigleyville with its chipped paint walls and the radiator that clanks when it's cold. It's a small place, just a couch, a coffee table covered in my sketchbooks, and a bed tucked against the window where I can hear the L train rumble by. I sat on the couch, still in my coffee shop apron, the smell of espresso clinging to my hair. My laptop was open, glowing in the dim light, and I started thinking about what I could do. The anger was there, sharp and hot, but there was also this nagging guilt, like maybe I was overreacting or maybe I should just let it go. I've always been the one to smooth things over to avoid making waves, but not this time. I'd given up too much for that trip. I pulled up the Hilton's website first. The reservation for 2 rooms at the Miami Beach Hotel was under my name, linked to my credit card. I'd paid $500 toward one of the rooms, figuring Chloe and I would share it. The total cost for 2 rooms for 14 nights was over $8,000. Steep because April is peak season in Miami, with spring breakers and tourists packing the beaches. I clicked Cancel Reservation and watched the confirmation pop up. No penalties since I was within the 48-hour window before check-in. My $500 would be refunded in a few days. It felt good, like taking back a piece of myself, but my heart was racing, wondering if I was going too far. Next, I called Hertz. The SUV rental for 2 weeks, about $800 total, was also on my card. I'd chipped in $150. I told the agent there was suspicious activity on my account. Not a lie, exactly, since I hadn't authorized my card for a trip I wasn't taking. They canceled it immediately, no questions asked, and promised a refund for my portion. I felt a little bad, picturing Dad and Diane stranded at Miami International Airport, but then I remembered Diane's sneer and Chloe's smug Instagram stories about family time. They didn't get to use me like that. Then came the excursions. I'd booked a Biscayne Bay boat tour for $27 per person and an Everglades airboat tour for $45 each, totaling about $290 for 4 of us. My share was around $70. A quick email to each company, and those were gone too. No refunds needed since they were small prepayments, but it meant no tours for them. Finally, the flights. I'd booked all 4 round-trip tickets from Chicago O'Hare to Miami through United, about $250 each, with my card covering my ticket. I called the airline, explained I wasn't traveling, and got a $200 refund after a $50 fee. It was enough to mess up their itinerary since the tickets were linked. I did all this the night before their 6 a.m. flight, sitting in my quiet apartment with the city lights flickering outside. It wasn't just about the money, though getting back around $800 after fees felt right. It was about them thinking. They could take from me and leave me behind. Growing up in Chicago, you learn to stand up for yourself. It's a city of grit, from the Cubs fans braving cold games to the baristas, like me dealing with rush hour crowds. I'd spent years trying to fit into Diane's version of family, bringing homemade brownies to dinners or helping Chloe with her college applications, only to be sidelined. Diane wasn't evil. She was just desperate to make her daughter the center of everything, maybe because she felt guilty about her own divorce. And Chloe? She wasn't cruel either, just spoiled, used to getting her way because Diane always put her first. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before I even finished my coffee. I was in my kitchenette, stirring cream into a mug with a Chicago skyline print, when the texts rolled in. Diane first. "Sarah, what happened to the hotel? The reservation's gone." Then Dad. "The car rental's canceled too. Did you do this?" Chloe sent a voice message, her voice shaking. "You're so selfish, Sarah. This was supposed to be my spring break." I listened, then deleted it. Selfish? After I'd worked extra shifts at the coffee shop, skipping nights out with friends to save for their dream trip. I didn't reply. Let them stew. By noon, Diane was at my door, banging loud enough to wake my neighbors. I opened it, still in my pajamas, and there she was, hair perfect as always, but her face red with fury. Her real estate job makes her good at keeping up appearances, but not today. "You ruined everything, Sarah," she said, her voice low but sharp. "Chloe's devastated. Do you know how much this meant to her?" I leaned against the doorframe, my small living room behind me cluttered with art supplies and a half-finished canvas of Lake Michigan. "Funny," I said. "I thought it was a family trip." "Guess I was wrong." She tried to argue, saying they just wanted quality time without tension, but it sounded like an excuse. I think Diane's always been scared I'd pull Dad's attention away from her and Chloe, like I was some threat to their perfect little trio. Dad called later, his voice tired. He's a quiet guy, spends long hours at the warehouse, and I know he feels caught between us. "Sarah, this isn't like you," he said. "Can you fix it? We'll include you next time." But it was too late. Miami hotels were booked solid for spring break. Hilton had no rooms left, and new flights were now $400 a pop. Hertz wouldn't take their reservation after my cancellation flagged the account. They were stuck in Chicago, the city's gray skies mocking their plans. I felt a pang of guilt. Dad's not a bad guy, just weak. But then I remembered how he'd let Diane call the shots, how he'd stayed silent when she said I wasn't invited. Chloe tried next, texting me a long rant about how I'd ruined her life. She's always been dramatic, posting about her yoga classes or her perfect family on social media, but I think she's insecure too, always needing Diane's approval. I didn't respond. For once, she'd have to deal with disappointment, something I'd faced plenty growing up in her shadow. I sat back on my couch, sketching in my notebook, a habit I picked up in art class to calm my nerves, and felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. I didn't want to hurt them, not really, but I needed them to see I wasn't invisible. The days that followed were quieter, but the fallout from canceling their Miami trip lingered like the Chicago winter that refused to let go, even in April. I stayed in my Wrigleyville apartment, the one with the creaky floorboards and the view of the elevated train tracks, where I'd watch the Red Line trains zip by at night. It's a small space, barely 600 square feet, with my art supplies scattered across a folding table and a secondhand bookshelf stuffed with design books and half-read novels. I'd always loved the neighborhood's energy, street vendors selling hot dogs during Cubs games, the chatter of bar patrons spilling out onto Clark Street. But that week, I kept to myself, trying to process what I'd done. I wasn't proud of everything, to be honest. Part of me felt powerful, like I'd finally stood up for myself after years of being pushed aside. But another part kept replaying Dad's tired voice on the phone or Chloe's shaky voicemail, and I wondered if I'd gone too far. I'd lie awake at night, the L train rattling my windows, second-guessing whether I should have just let it slide. Maybe that's what it's like to stand up for yourself, feeling right and wrong at the same time. Growing up in Chicago, you learn to be tough, but you also learn family is messy. I wanted to be part of theirs, But Diane and Chloe made it clear I wasn't. The financial side of it was straightforward, at least. I'd gotten back about $800 from the cancellations, $500 from the Hilton Hotel, $150 from the Hertz rental, $70 from the Biscayne Bay and Everglades tours, and $100 from my flight ticket after United's cancellation fee. It wasn't a fortune, but for a 22-year-old barista making $18 an hour at a coffee shop near Wrigley Field, it was enough to cover next month's rent and maybe a few art supplies. I'd worked hard for that money, picking up extra shifts during the morning rush when commuters would flood in, ordering lattes and leaving crumpled tips. Knowing I'd reclaimed it felt fair, especially since Diane had no problem using my contribution for a trip I was never meant to join. Diane tried to reach me again a couple of days later. She sent a long text, the kind she probably practiced to sound like the caring real estate agent she plays at open houses. "Sarah, I know things got heated," she wrote. "I was really starting to see you as part of our family. This felt cruel, though. Chloe's been crying for days." Reading it, I rolled my eyes. Cruel? Letting me believe I was included, taking my money, then cutting me out wasn't cruel. I think Diane was trying to hold her family together, maybe out of guilt from her own past. She'd mentioned once how her divorce left Chloe feeling abandoned, but that didn't give her the right to treat me like I didn't matter. I left her message unanswered, setting my phone on the coffee table next to a half-finished sketch of the Chicago skyline. Chloe was next, as expected. She sent a voice message, her voice sharp but wobbly, like she was trying to sound tough, but was falling apart. "Sarah, you have no idea how much this trip meant to me," she said. "I needed this break before finals. You're so selfish." I laughed a little, not because it was funny, but because it was so her. Chloe's life revolved around being perfect. Straight-A student, yoga influencer, always posting about her blessed life on Instagram from her dorm at DePaul University. But I knew she felt pressure to keep up that image, especially for Diane, who bragged about her at every family gathering. This was probably the first time Chloe didn't get exactly what she wanted, and I didn't feel sorry for her. I deleted the message and went back to my sketch, adding details to the Willis Tower. Dad showed up at my apartment a few days later, unannounced. I was in the middle of cleaning my tiny kitchenette, scrubbing coffee stains off the counter, when I heard the knock. He stood there in his work jacket, the one he wears to the warehouse, looking older than his 50 years. His job as a logistics manager keeps him on his feet, coordinating shipments, and I could see the stress in his eyes. "Sarah, can we talk?" he asked, stepping inside. My living room felt even smaller with him there, his broad shoulders out of place among my art supplies and thrift store furniture. "I know you're upset," he said, sitting on the edge of my couch, "but canceling everything, that was a lot. Chloe's crushed, and Diane's a mess." I wanted to scream that I was crushed too, that I'd been excited about Miami, about maybe feeling like his daughter again. But I just stood there, arms crossed. "You let them cut me out, Dad," I said. "I paid for part of it. I thought it was for all of us." He ran a hand through his thinning hair, looking guilty but also frustrated, like he was stuck between us. "It wasn't supposed to be like that," he said. "Diane thought it'd be easier without tension. I should have spoken up." That was the closest he'd come to an apology, but it wasn't enough. I think Dad's always felt torn, loyal to me because I'm his daughter, but afraid of rocking the boat with Diane. He's not a bad guy. He'd bring me snacks from the warehouse sometimes or text me about Cubs games, but he's never stood up to Diane, and that's what hurt. "Let's plan another trip," he offered. "You'll be included this time." But it sounded hollow, like something he said to end the conversation. I shook my head. "I'm good, Dad. I think I'll use my refund for something just for me. Maybe a weekend in New York City, see some art galleries." He looked at me like he didn't recognize me, and maybe he didn't. I wasn't the quiet kid anymore, the one who'd nod and go along to keep the peace. I'd spent years trying to fit into their family, showing up to Chloe's recitals, helping Diane plant her garden in Oak Park, only to be pushed aside. That moment with Dad sitting there, I realized I was done trying. I didn't need their approval anymore. They never got their Miami trip back. The Hilton was booked solid, new flights were too expensive, and the rental company wouldn't deal with them after my cancellation. They were stuck in Chicago, probably bickering in their suburban house with its tidy lawn and Diane's tea collection. I didn't hear from them for a while after that, and I didn't care. For the first time, I felt like I was choosing myself, my dreams, my money, my peace. I started planning that New York trip, maybe to visit the Met or just walk through Central Park. Miami Beach was their loss, but my future felt like it was finally mine. The best part? Knowing they couldn't push me around anymore. If you've got people in your life who treat you like you're invisible, sometimes you have to make them see you, even if it means making a mess. For me, it was worth it.